Okay, so we're gonna make a very simple choose your own adventure game. So if we just go here and we say main.py, this will be our main script. First, we can make a print statement just that it looks a little bit better. Since we're gonna be using the terminal, a print statement will put it on a new line rather than putting it right here, and so it'll look better. What we're doing today is purely in the terminal, but over time you can transition this into an actual window and it'll look totally fine. Now let's make a function and let's call it take input. This will take in the player input. So we can say text, and this text will be yes or no. So it'll just be whatever we want to tell the player before they put their input in. We'll have the possible answers right here, and the answers will be a list because we can either have Y or N. Now we use a colon right here to define the function, and let's just say inp equals input of text. So it's going to say this text here, and then we will put in our player input. Then we'll say input.lower to make sure that if the player puts in uppercase, then it'll be fine. Then we will make sure to say input equals input.lower. And then we'll say for letter in input if letter is in our answers. So if one of the letters in our input here is one of these answers here, Y or N, then we can return that answer. And if none of the answers are correct, then we'll return false. Now we can test if this works. So just say take input, and it should be fine like this. And we can just press F5 and make sure to use Python compiler, or you can press run and say start debugging. Then it's just gonna say Y or N. And if I put in Y, then that's it. And let's just print this just to make sure that's working. And if I say something like X, then it shouldn't work. So just F5, so it runs again. And if I say F, it says false because it's not Y or N. But if I said something like no, rather than just N, I say no, right? Then if I press enter, it'll say N. It's able to know that no means no. Now let's just put this in main. So we can make a function called main with 2 underscores just to say that's really important. And let's make sure to define this. Right underneath main, we can call it. This is just good practice because you might have a really big main and you don't want it to be like messed up among all of these other definitions. So we just make a main here. And let's put a print above it. And let's call this dungeon. It's a really generic name. You can be really creative with whatever you want with this, but I'm just gonna say dungeon. Now, if I print this, it'll just say welcome to dungeon, yes or no. Very crazy stuff. I'm gonna make another thing and say, do you want to pick up sword? Now, we could make it so that every time we see an object, we have to say something like this, or we could make a really easy function for it. So let's just say define found object. And first, before we make this function, let's make an actual class for objects. So let's call this obj because object is already taken by Python. And then we just say underscore initialization or init. And this is a default Python function that will run every time we create a new object. And we just say self because it's gonna know as the whole object, it'll be itself. And we'll take in a name for the object. And that should be good enough for now. We just say self.name equals name. And the reason we do that is because self is contained within the whole class, or the whole class here, right? Name is only within this function. So if we want to actually hold on to name for later, we can make it have its own variable in the self. Now for our found object, we can say the object that we found, and that'll just be one of these. And let's create a sword. So right here, we can say sword equals obj, so object, and the name of that object can be sword. And now we can take this and put it into our found object. So I'll call found object here, and we can add in our print function. You want to pick up a, and then instead of sword, we want this to work with all of our objects. So instead of sword, we can say object obj.name. So that's going to find our name that's here, right? This self.name, and it's going to put it there instead. And let's make sure to put an F here, because otherwise it's not actually going to say the name. It's just going to say object.name. It's going to look kind of weird. Instead of this, we just say our found object. So it'll say, do you want to pick up a found object? Let's take the input in here. So we'll say our input is equal to take input. We'll say if input is equal to y, then print And then we can say the same thing. You picked up a object.name. Now, whenever we pick it up, we'll say you picked it up. If input is equal to n, then let's just say print. We can just copy this and say you didn't pick up a. This single quotation, we're going to use double quotations for our print because otherwise it'll mess up. And now what we can do is we can create a player inventory. So we can just say inventory is equal to a blank list. And then in our found object, we can say inventory inv, and we can just make it equal to blank by default. And in here, we can say found object sword and inventory. And right here, we can say inv.append obj. So it's just going to append our object if we say yes. At the very end, just to make sure that all works, we can just print our inventory. Welcome to the dungeon. Do you want to pick up a sword? Pick up a sword, and now it's going to show our object. Perfect. Now, of course, what's a sword without actually being able to attack something? So let's go back up here to our classes, and let's just make a class called creature. And let's make our own initialization for that creature. Create all this stuff for us. We can say name, health. That's the only thing. Those are the only things that we're going to need right now. And we can say self.name equals name. Self.health equals health. Now we can go down here and we can create a new function called encounter for when we encounter a creature. And we can input our creature. And now we will just print UCA, and we'll put in the creature.name. We can of course say, do you attack this creature? Our input equals take input. We can make our if input equals y or if input equals n. You print attack, say the creature.health, and let's go over here and let's just say, let's make a new function for our creature. So this will just be hurt and self mount, and we can say self.health is minus equal to mount. So if the amount is 1, then the health will take itself and subtract 1 off of itself. Now we can say if health is less than or equal to 0, then print self.name. Make sure to put these in curly brackets, F, and we can say that is dead. And make sure to say self.health here too. And we can return true here. So this just says it'll return if it's dead or not. So if it's not dead, we return false. So if it is dead, then it'll return true. And if it's not dead, it'll return false. Instead of doing this, we can say creature.hurt, and we can just say 1, for example, but later we'd probably want to say like a specific thing. And now if creature.hurt 1, this means if the creature is dead, because it returns whether it's dead or not, then we take our list of creatures, which we can add here, equals a blank list, and we can just say creatures.remove creature. And we can just add creatures right here. So now let's create a new creature called goblin. Goblin equals creature, and the goblin's name will be Gobby, and his health can be 2 because he's really weak. Gobby is super weak. We can make an encounter with our Gobby, and we just put in our creatures here. So now if we run this, we'll be able to pick up a sword, and then you see a Gobby, do you attack it? And we can just say yes. Now it's saying that this has no hurt. I accidentally added hurt to the object. So let's just remove this from the object and put this in our creature. Whoopsie. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, so do you pick up a sword? Yes. Do you attack it? Yes. Attack. And that's it. It doesn't do anything else because we didn't actually kill Gobby. But let's just say Gobby has only 1 health. Now when we hit Gobby, it's actually going to kill him. So we pick up a sword. Yes. Do you attack it? Yes. Gobby is dead. Now one thing we need to do is when we are creating our creature, we are adding him to our creature list. So at the very end here, let's just say creatures, and in our goblin, in our initialization, we should have a creatures, and we just say creatures.append. So it's going to append itself to the creature. So it's just going to add it to the list. That's what append means. So now if we do this, it's not going to throw us an error. it's going to actually remove him from the list. So do you want to pick up a sword? Yes. Do you want to attack it? Yes. Gabi's dead, and that's everything. So you can see how you can make this more and more complicated, and I encourage you to do so. Just try to make some more encounters, try to make it so maybe like swords can do more damage. Use your variables, use printing. This has a lot of potential, and so I'm sure you can do something with it. Thanks for watching.